Tonight on Insight, how are Australians talking to each other about the Voice referendum? And what are they saying to convince others to their side?
This whole thing about this referendum, it's quite insulting.
Something is better than nothing, particularly when we keep losing family.
The Voice is really predicated on this principle that Aboriginal people are disadvantaged, and I don't want that principle to be attached to me.
How have you tried to convince Miles to vote yes?
I guess to see it through civil conversation.
I'm estranged from my daughters. They describe me as a racist and stupid.
You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family.
My name is Diu. Just riding my bike from Canberra to Uluru. I felt compelled to jump on a push bike and ride here to symbolically deliver my vote, but also to just have a yarn with people along the way.
Lovely to meet you. Nice to meet you. Anya?
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you.
I just think that's just too good of a moment to let pass, to just sit there idle and just hope that it's somehow miraculously going to get over the line without the everyday person doing something about it. So my way of doing that was just getting on a bike and just having a yarn with people.
How are you?
Yeah, good. I saw you were from Canberra.
How are you?
Is that right?
Yeah. I was having a yarn with people about the referendum that's coming up.
Oh.
You know?
I'll definitely be voting yes.
I thought we kind of already had representatives already.
I thought we were all one country.
I thought maybe there is more to learn about this.
Had a yarn on the side of the road, you know, with some guy pulled over to help me out when I was struggling putting my tent together. So he pulled over the side of the road, you know, helped me with that, and then he made a cup of tea on the side of the road, and we had a chat about the Voice.
Hey, Sarge, how are you, buddy? It's good to see you again.
I just want to give the Indigenous people what they ask for, and I think the majority of them are going to go with yes, so I'm going with yes.
Uluru, at least for me, it's a final destination because it is the heart of the nation, but this is where the Uluru Statement from the heart was adopted. So I felt like it was important for the political centre, Canberra, to unite, you know, with the heart of the nation and beat as one, reconcile our differences, build a better Australia. Before you start talking to somebody about religion and politics, you kind of need to have some sort of, you know, bond form somewhere else before you can have that. And I feel like, you know, the campfire is the perfect place for that, you know, where you're sitting there, whether you're having a few beverages or you're just getting warm and you're talking about what you've done for the day. It's a really nice segue to then sort of go into discussing the important issues of the day. Campfires are a perfect place for that you can change people's minds.
Diu, you're voting yes. Did you meet more yes or no voters on the road to Uluru?
I think maybe slightly on the yes, but probably more so that were undecided.
And were people open to talking about the Voice?
Yeah, had a lot of very honest conversations on both sides of the political spectrum.
You're an electrician from Canberra. Why make such a big commitment to the Voice?
As somebody that was born from, you know, a different country, we have similar history in that the United Kingdom, you know, British sort of colonised my country as well. So there's that sort of understanding, but also just the understanding that the issues of this country are also my issues. So, you know, I'm involved, I'm part of either, you know, resolving the issue or continuing it, but I want to resolve it. So that's pretty much why I rode my bike to Uluru.
You were born in what is now known as South Sudan. How does being an immigrant inform your perspective?
Well, I guess we are more aware of sort of British history, not only just across the world, but also here. So I guess that was one starting point. But also, too, I go back to what my father has always said, you know, the country in which you're in, the issues of, you know, that land are also yours. So I feel it's also my responsibility, and that's hearing the voices of First Nations people, and I feel that will make us a richer country, a more prosperous country, you know, and a country that can then, you know, the world can look to sort of emulate. And that's really what I'm really hoping for, that this voice achieves if it gets up.
Steve, you're a no voter. You're having conversations about the Voice with everyone you meet, particularly within the Asian communities. How did you form your opinion?
I didn't know anything about it. We had a Chinese elder, who shall remain nameless. He accused me of being racist because, you know, I wouldn't say yes. And it was so shocking to me. And when I did figure it out, not just the Voice itself, but the consequence of the Voice, then I decided no is the best way. forward for me anyway, because I know that there'll be divisions all throughout the referendum period and beyond that, whether it's yes or no. And I love this country. I'm an immigrant too. And I'm so glad all the opportunities offered to me. And I just don't want it to be divided from this point forward for my children, grandchildren, and so forth.
Do your family members think the same way?
No. In my family, it's not so easy because there are some very vocal opinions, and some not so. Some still undecided, and some flip to the other side. I've seen that happen. And then it's just a microcosm of what's happening in my neighborhood, in my community, and especially among the Chinese diaspora.
What do you say when someone close to you thinks differently?
It's very easy to just forget, that people have different opinions. And so I need to be the listener more than the talker. That's how I find. And the issue with the voice is that I don't feel we need a voice, or the Aboriginal community don't need a voice, because they already have a voice, you see. The problem is the ear, not the voice. So what I see is, in the greater, bigger thing, is that we need a solution that makes the ear listen.
What about you and your siblings? Do you all agree on how to vote on The Voice?
I'm a proponent of free democracy, so let them choose. Even my own son, and my nieces, nephews, they all have their own opinions, and let it be. I just hope the repercussion thereafter, the division is not greater after 14th of October. I just hope.
Well, Australians are voting on October 14th. Let's take a look at what's brought us here.
6 years ago, 250 delegates from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities across the country met at Uluru. They signed the Uluru Statement from the Heart, calling in part for a First Nations voice to Parliament to be established and enshrined in the Australian Constitution. Any proposed amendments to the Constitution must be put to a national vote called a referendum. On October 14th, Australians over 18 who are enrolled to vote will be asked to consider a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Voters in the referendum will be asked one question: do you approve this proposed alteration? Voters must write their answer either yes or no on the ballot paper. A referendum is passed when a majority, more than half of voters from across Australia vote yes, and a majority, more than half of voters in at least 4 states vote yes. If passed, the voice to Parliament will be enshrined in the Constitution and will be chosen by and representative of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, and will give advice to the Parliament and Government about laws and policies that directly affect First Nations peoples. The voice will not have a program delivery function, nor will it have a veto or legislative power.
Marie, you're a Dunghutti and Gamilaroi woman, and you're here with your friend and mentor, Kat, a Torres Strait Islander from the Mer and Moa peoples. Marie, how are you going to vote?
I'm definitely voting no.
And you, Kat?
I'm voting yes.
So what's it like to discuss The Voice between you both, Kat?
We have been involved in some very heated dinner parties, but Marie and I are actually business partners, so we have a lot of respect for each other's knowledge and skills. And whilst we have very different opinions about The Voice, we absolutely respect each other's views and each other's rights to have a different opinion.
And what about for you, Marie?
The same applies. I respect Kat on every level, and she has strong opinions in regards to voting yes, and I respect those views. Unfortunately, I have a different point of view from my experiences, but I think it's good that we can have these discussions but still be best friends and business partners.
Kat, what about conversations amongst your social and professional networks?
It's quite interesting. I've had some friends of mine reach out because their children have been confused about which way to vote. And I kind of use the analogy that when my friend's daughter was confused, I said to her, just imagine when you were in your mum's belly and your mum found out that she was pregnant with you. She didn't know all of the details. She didn't know what the outcome would be. She didn't know that she'd have this perfect little baby. But it was an amazing experience, a gestational experience of bringing you into this world. And although she didn't know the outcome, she had every faith that she would produce a beautiful baby and a gorgeous young woman that she turned out to be. I think in many ways The Voice is similar. We have no idea what the outcome will be. We are birthing something new in this country with this voice. We've never been down this path before. And I think you just have to have some faith and go on this journey.
Marie, how about you? Is The Voice an easy or difficult thing to discuss?
No, not at all. I've had many people come to me and ask me what I think, and I always respond to them that I'm happy to share my thoughts about why I'm not voting yes, but I want them to do their own homework because I don't believe it's my right to influence somebody else's vote. But for me, I've seen many, many things come and go in government, and I look for change like everybody else. I think if they were asking us to vote yes for treaty, I'd be right there voting yes. The Voice is a reference group, and in my heart, knowing everything that I've seen and witnessed in government, working with government on both sides, I can't honestly vote yes.
Grant, you're a builder from Brisbane, and for the past few years you've been working in Alice Springs and Cape York. How's that influenced your decision to vote no to The Voice?
My experience is that the Northern Territory and Queensland government's delivery of services is very dystopian, and if you ask any of the people responsible to draw a diagram of who's delivering services and how much overlap there is and how much dysfunction, you would start to get some idea of why we're spending so much money and not getting anywhere. I'm very sceptical that this is going to do anything for regional communities, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
What did you see that made you feel that the funding wasn't getting where it needed to go?
When you get out of a car, I got out of the car, the first experience, I'm going to a remote community about 3 hours out of Alice Springs. It was 50 degrees in the shade, and inside the houses it was 55 degrees because they have no insulation in the roofs. There's no insulation in the walls. They're living in chook pens. And it's a disgrace and it's a shame, and I apologise. I did my best. We're not revealing just how dystopian it is. Something does have to be done, but we have to have some, responsibility for where all of this money is going before we enter into a new bureaucracy. And I'd like to see a proposal, if we're having a voice, to describe how we're going to overcome all the issues. And if you haven't done that, you haven't done your homework, and I won't be supporting it.
What are conversations like with your family about The Voice?
I'm estranged from my daughters, who feel that it's a no-brainer, and they describe me as a chicken little and a racist and stupid.
Well, John, you're a Bundjalung man from a prominent family. Your younger brother, Warren Mundine, is one of the leaders of the No campaign.
Do we want our traditional nations, our mobs, made into one harmonious group? Or do we want to be segregated again as a race of people in the Constitution? Do we want traditional owner rights usurped? Because that's what the referendum and this Uluru Statement is all about. What we describe as a symbolic declaration of war against modern Australia.
John, how are you going to vote?
I think I will vote yes, mainly because this doesn't happen every day. We do have voices to influence government, but really this will be a formal thing to happen.
Have you and your brother Warren talked about The Voice together?
No, we haven't. We meet about once a year over Christmas and possibly a couple of other times, we have family gatherings, right? Now, last Christmas I couldn't be there. We had the other side of my family were having troubles, so I spent Christmas with them. But we have occasional conversations. They're not quite as intense. We have massive differences on lots of things, but you have to live with your family. You can't pick your family. You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. They're just there. And I think also nearly every Aboriginal person, I think, in some way has family. So you can't pick them. They're just there.
Why do you think differently about this issue?
We have different experiences. I lived in remote places and I lived with very poverty-stricken people. I saw lots of different things maybe to what Warren did and other people in my family did. And that's why I came to think the way I do.
Penelope, you're studying arts law. You intend to vote no. Why is that?
I actually started off quite amenable to the proposal, and then as the debate kind of escalated, and it was very much spearheaded more so by emotion and a social justice, human rights narrative, which was inevitable and justified and good in that respect. But it didn't progress, I think, much in terms of the actual detail of the voice or the detail behind the amendments and what that will look like. There's not much detail of this exact process, and it's ambiguities like that I wish the government had spent more time actually looking at and explaining to the public.
What's it like speaking up against the voice at university?
At first, it's probably not encouraged to talk much about it. I think now also heading towards the referendum, people in a way are actually kind of sick of talking about it, which is a real shame. But from both sides, I think everyone's been keen to hear certain perspectives, whether that be legal perspectives, whether that be more down the social justice route. And it's been good to hear about people's experiences actually within remote communities and seeing how the voice and the discussion has played out there.
Miles, you're a Dunghutti and Gamilaroi man studying law. How are you going to vote?
I'll be voting no.
You're here with your best mate from uni, Jordan, a Wiradjuri man. Jordan, you've just completed a Bachelor of Social Research and Policy. How are you voting?
I'll be voting yes.
So Jordan and Miles, recently you debated each other in front of a crowd at uni. How did that go?
Yeah, it was really good. I think it was a really respectful conversation, and I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. I think a lot of the institutions had already made their minds up on what position they had, particularly UNSW. They said that they were voting yes in support of the yes. So I think what we really wanted to do was create a space that was safe for everyone to come along and share their opinions, and that just because the university says that it's in support of the yes, that students have a different opinion as well. So,
Jordan, how was it for you?
Yeah, good. It was kind of the first time I'd kind of heard a constructed argument for the no side. So that really was the first time I was informed of why Miles was voting no. We just decided, we're best mates, but we're on different sides. So if we could lay the information out for everyone, let them make their own decision without it being thrust upon them, as much as this debate is.
You both grew up in regional New South Wales. Jordan, are you surprised you both have different perspectives?
Yeah, I am. That's kind of the basis of our friendship. We're both from small country towns. We both come from, poverty. We both come from single Aboriginal mothers. And I think, from my own perspective, what I nail it down to is I try to see the positives of what are going to come out of the voice.
Why are you voting yes?
Being from where I come from, Narromine, it's a small country town. What I've seen, I know in my heart that change needs to come, and we've been seeking this change for a long time. And now the work's been done for us. It was done in 2017. We put it to the people, and they've said yes, we want to do this referendum. So now that we have the chance, so we should take it and run with it.
And Miles, why are you voting no?
Like Jordan's already touched on, I grew up in very similar circumstances. I just don't see how, a body in Canberra is going to make any practical difference on the ground. I've had a lot of experience run-ins with local organisations, Aboriginal organisations, and they haven't been very successful either in terms of fixing the problems on the ground. So I don't really have a lot of trust in terms of that. I think that power should lie with the people, and I think that what's coming out of the Yes campaign is that self-determination is something that the government can give you. I do not believe that at all. I think that it's a personal thing and it's up to individual responsibility.
I'm Karen Guevara. I'm an Mbabran woman and I'm on my mother's country, not very far from the Watsonville area. And I'm sitting here with my brother and sisters and my auntie. Well, in Mbabran people, we have quite a large area of land, 357 square kilometres. So our people have been given back some of the land, but not all. I'm the chairperson of the Mbabran Aboriginal Corporation. It's a registered native title prescribed body. So we have 7 directors on there and about 150 traditional owners. I'm voting no for the up-and-coming referendum. I feel that the voice is too broad, and when we talk about sovereignty in the different nations of Australia, there's all different voices coming from different tribes. So without the details, we're in the dark about how that will look like. So to stay safe is to vote no, because it will affect other sovereign nations.
I'm Eddie Turpin and I'm Karen's brother. With our tribe, we're connected to 3 tribes on the tableland. That's my mum's country here, Mbabran, Yidinji, Dad's country, Nudjinji is my grandmother's country. They all know we're sovereign, but the language that they use never mention us. They say First People, but never say sovereign. We say we're sovereign, and sovereign is something that you don't learn or anything. You grow up in it, flows down from the elders.
So I've been pastoring the church for a number of years. Since the referendum subject come up, I have a lot of non-Indigenous people discussing that with me, and a lot of them come to ask me if we should vote no to support us, and I'm saying it's lovely to support the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but at the end of the day, you have to make your own decision.
I don't believe we should be voting at this stage because we're still ignorant.
I don't like disunity brought in by such radical changes.
At the moment, we do have the ability to be able to manage our country, and I just believe that that would be abolished if you're coming into a constitution together. If they're not going to name Mbabran specifically, that's who we are, then the voice would not represent me. I'd be lost in the whole system. People in Canberra, we don't want to have them to have the voice for us or to represent us. We have our own voice, the Mbabran people, and it's strong, and we're proud, and we're making lots of impacts on our community.
John, as a Bundjalung man and a Yes voter, what do you think when you hear some traditional owners intend to vote no?
I'm an optimistic, cynical person. It's time Australia actually grew up and stopped blaming the British for everything. The nation has to now do something and change a lot of the attitudes that they're still carrying from that period.
Megan, you're a Menang woman from Perth. What do you think when you hear some traditional owners intend to vote no?
It's a democracy. People can choose to vote the way that they want to. There's a lot of people that are misinformed about the information that's out there right now, so it's really quite concerning. But what I do encourage people, have a look at both sides of the argument and then come in informed. That's really quite important in that respect.
How are you going to vote?
I came out initially said no, and I said no for a number of reasons. One is that there was not enough detail in relation to it. There was this idea about having the voice, but I had no idea what that would actually look like. In terms of the Constitution, well, the Constitution's already racist. You only have to look at the two provisions, Section 51, 26 and also 25. So there were some issues there. So I came out, organised some rallies, no, not voting, don't know enough about it. And there were other reasons as well why I chose to vote no, because it wasn't any communication, there was lack of consultation. What I have done since then, and I've spoken to different activist groups that I'm aligned with and brothers and sisters and so forth, people in the prisons, people that have had their children taken from them at hospital at birth, and it's absolutely cruel in terms of the devastation that's being inflicted upon our people right now across the country. I'm now voting yes. And the reason for that is because we have no central body. So what I'm saying in terms of one coordinated place, one coordinated approach, one central body, we're lacking that right now.
Was there a particular catalyst that changed your mind?
Yeah, there was. So suicides. That is what changed my mind. A little boy who went into care as a 6-year-old. He lost his brother to suicide at the age of 10 years old. He lost his own life at the age of 23, leaving behind 2 little children. Another little fella came out of the prison, 18 months, no longer here. It was because of these 2 little fellas, and you see the tears and the hurt and the agony and the pain. Our country, to say that we're dividing it even further, we're already divided. That's the reality. At the end of the day, we're all brothers and sisters of the human family, and the bar, it is so low. All it is asking for that advisory body, and if we can include other people from remote so they can speak to their issues, you know, that is a good thing. It's a start in a long journey.
Can I ask you, how are your family and friends talking and feeling about the referendum?
I speak to a lot of people. But in terms of family, you know, like we have a bit of a yarn about it. I'll say, hey, what do you reckon about the voice there? Oh, what, the TV show? No, the actual voice. So, you know, that's the information that still needs to be communicated. But it's been really strong, healthy, robust, respectful conversations. Some of my sister girls, they vote no for it, and that's okay. Again, it's totally up to them, and I respect their decision.
Simon, you've given up work for 2 months to talk to people about voting yes. How do you think The Voice will help First Nations people?
When I was a 16-year-old kid, I was living in a country town called Yungai Creek on the mid-north coast. And I made the mistake of telling my family that I was gay. That night, they packed me up, they put me on a train, and I was in Sydney. I spent the next 3 years of my life living on a street, doing sex work, being treated like absolute scum. And the only thing that got me out of that situation was that my voice was heard by the services and organisations that were there, and I was able to shape my future. That's why I believe in The Voice. That's why I'm voting yes, because I know that if we give this offer to a First Nations people, I've seen it work.
Marie, you're a businesswoman. What are the reasons you're voting no to The Voice?
It's not my business that influences my opinion. The Voice is a reference group, and I've been on plenty of reference groups. For me, The Voice, ask ourselves, why do we have a Minister for Aboriginal Affairs? Why did we vote for young Aboriginal Australians to get into Parliament? We have people in this audience that are studying, going to uni, getting degrees. They're The Voice. We, the people, are The Voice.
Tell us about your family's background.
Well, my grandmother was one of 18 stolen, removed children. My mother was one of 12. I'm one of 9, all removed from family and country. Very, very sad. Took a very long time to reconnect to my family and to my country. I'm very passionate about Aboriginal issues and healing the past. As a child in care, I was abused, sexually abused, and then knowing that you're, as an Aboriginal person, you've got no value, you know?
How does that history influence your vote?
I think it really does empower me to go no to a reference group. I don't want to see our country use a referendum for an outcome that is not going to have any guarantees of genuine change. I don't want my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren or any mob having to continue to suffer. And truth in being able to say and establish proper services and proper funding for our mobs to make real change and really listen to them comes down to treaty, not a voice, not a reference group.
Simon, you grew up in a town near Kempsey. Does your family background influence your intention to vote yes?
Absolutely. We were taught that racism was not acceptable to everyone but Indigenous people. And for me as an adult now, I was taught growing up in the bush that every Australian deserves a fair go. And I just feel like this is something that we can give our First Nations people, to give them a fair go, to have informed decision on what affects them. And that's why I'm voting yes.
Will voting yes help you to come to terms with your family's past?
No. I think the challenge is for me is actually not going to be this decision. It's actually going to be what I choose to raise my children in, and the way that I choose to teach my children about our family's history and what that means. And I wish that my elders in my family had have come out and said, this is a part of our history, but you make the decision to move forward. That will be where I'll reconcile.
Kat, will enshrining the voice in the Constitution help to heal past wrongs against First Nations people?
I'm not sure that enshrining it in the Constitution will fully heal all of the wrongs. Reflecting on John Farnham's lyrics, we're not going to sit in silence, we're not going to live in fear, I feel like we've done that too much as First Nations people. We've sat in silence, we've lived in fear of raising our voices. And I think enshrining the voice in the Constitution is the beginning of us being allowed to raise our voices.
Steve, you're voting no. What do you think?
Don't get me wrong, I do advocate for closing the gap. And I'm looking at the Aboriginals in the outback who are marginalised. They're the one who needs the help. And so I don't think it's through the voice that we can help them. I don't think it's going to work. I don't see any pragmatic solution in that sense by giving them an extra voice. And regrettably, there's got to be a better way.
Guyala, you're a Birragubba and Wonnarua woman. How have you formulated your opinions on the voice?
I've spent a lot of time watching and going through the histories of my grandfather, my great-grandmother, them holding very similar panel discussions like this, them creating, one of the first all Aboriginal owned and operated radio stations, schools, to medical services, to land councils. So they definitely have shaped me to be the woman I am today. And I think this whole thing about this referendum, it's quite insulting to see, because my elders fought for so much more. I think we all deserve something better than the crumbs that are on offer.
How are you and those around you going to vote?
To be quite honest with you, I've never been registered to vote, because whether we do vote yes or no, we are pledging our allegiance to the Crown. And I'm not a British subject. I am a traditional, tribal and sovereign original Aboriginal woman of this country. Stop giving in to the Western mentality of divide and conquer, because that is what is running our country into the ground, and our people and our nation.
You're 24 and you're planning to abstain?
I do. I don't trust the government. We've never had an honourable relationship with them or the system. I believe we need more.
Here's a clip of you on TikTok reciting a poem you wrote about the voice to Parliament.
I feel like this could be another one of their illusions to cover up their wrongdoings and distract us yet again. Let's not forget that there are still over 500 Aboriginal deaths in custody and not one conviction. Our mob already have a voice, but who's listening? Obviously fallen on deaf ears.
What reactions are you getting to those sentiments online?
Very mixed emotions. I'm getting a lot of hate from both my own mob and non-Indigenous people, but I'm also getting a lot of support from both my own mob and non-Indigenous people. I think when people hear the controversial things that I say, it makes them have a real think about the truth of our people in this country. The experiences that I go through are so much more different than mob in communities or mob living in main cities. We don't all have the same experience.
Mike, you're retired and a grandfather from Canberra. You're also on TikTok speaking about the referendum. Why?
I met with people from my church. We were interested in how we should respond. The church over the years has been on the wrong side and the right side, trying to do the right thing, understanding that everybody is created equal. But after discussing with them, I came to the view that yes was the right way to go. I have been experimenting with TikTok, and I thought, and a number of other social media channels as well, and I thought I'd like to put out my reasons. I'm not a constitutional expert, but my life experiences dealing with mediation, dealing with people in crisis, and being a Christian, I thought gave me some other reasons to add to the debate.
And why are you voting yes?
When I was involved in mediation, people who have been aggrieved, they usually want three things. They want a voice, they want to be heard, and they want an ability to tell their truth. And they want an agreement that it won't happen again. So when I read the Uluru Statement, I see those three things. When I talk to people in crisis, they don't want me to give them a solution. They just want someone to listen. And so I've learned that you just need to listen to people. It helps them.
Well, Riley, you've picked up on what Mike is saying, combating his views on TikTok. Let's have a look.
What is new is the idea that the requirement for them to have a voice will be in the Constitution. That will mean that though the government can vary the structure and the details as to how they work, they can't simply silence them by abolishing them. Vote Yes is us telling all governments into the future that they must continue to listen. Vote Yes to a voice to Parliament.
Yeah, here's why I'm not doing that. What law, policy or piece of legislation prevents the participation of Indigenous Australians within our Parliament, political and legal decision-making process here in Australia? I just need that answered. The idea that you need a referendum to listen to Indigenous Australians is ridiculous. The only thing you need is 2 ears.
Riley, you're only 16 years old. Why do you feel so strongly against the voice?
I do believe it is divisive. I think it creates an exclusive and segregative advisory body. It also assumes that Indigenous Australians in terms of political affiliations and beliefs are monolithic. It also suggests by saying you can have a voice for an entire ethnic group. The socio-economic situations and status of Indigenous Australians is also not monolithic. There are Indigenous Australians who are disadvantaged from, largely rural and remote communities, who don't have well-funded communities, who have the continual cycle of impoverishment, crime and unemployment as well. And that's Indigenous and non-Indigenous. So I think the kind of rhetoric that we're all the same, I think is totally wrong.
Riley and Mike, you've never met in person, only communicated online. What's it like to meet here tonight, Mike?
Well, it's great to meet someone who's so articulate and passionate, and it's been a real pleasure to meet up with Riley and talk to him.
And what about for you, Riley?
Oh, I say it's the same. I think that it really shows and illustrates that we can be of different political views and have respectful dialogue, and it shows that Australia is a nation where we can have that dialogue.
You're only 16, you can't vote, but why are you so passionate about this?
I think it's legislation that if it is voted in, it's going to affect not just Indigenous people, but non-Indigenous people as well. The legal scope for it is matters relating to Indigenous Australians. So that means it can advise on things like tax, it can advise on immigration, defence. All of those things affect Indigenous people, so it is part of the scope.
How have your opinions been formed?
Well, I would say my opinions have been mainly from my lived experiences. My mother, who is an Indigenous woman, my father, who is a white Australian. I think that there is that rhetoric that all Indigenous people think the same, and I think that that's something that I very much push back against.
Do you know campaigners say the voice referendum is divisive and inequitable? What do you think?
The Constitution itself is divisive, and I think that's what really we should focus on here. The Constitution by its sheer nature is divisive. It was formed without the inclusion of First Nations people. I don't necessarily think that the voice itself is divisive. I think the voice is trying to make the Constitution more inclusive and therefore non-divisive.
Hi, Julian. Nice to see you. Come on in. Hi, Renee. Yeah. Welcome. Friday night is the beginning of the Jewish Sabbath. Does anybody want a drink? We call it Shabbat, we have a meal, and it's usually a time there's lots of discussion. Please help yourself if you want to grab something. I'm going to sit here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushonu b'mitzvoso v'tzivonu lahadlik ner shel Shabbos. Shabbos, everybody. Well, I went to Adelaide for the launch of the Yes campaign. Mary Crooks from Together Yes gave a presentation on kitchen table talks. I immediately thought kitchen table talks will absolutely fit into a Shabbat table talk. I'm going to ask Renee if she will do the acknowledgement of country.
Kama Maringai Dalawalunga. Greetings and how are you all? I feel really empowered to have this conversation because my nan grew up in a time in the 1940s where she was really ashamed to be Aboriginal and had to hide it from her family and community in order to hold a job. So I take every opportunity I can to try and share the message around what the voice is and do that in a really simple way.
There's a lot of connections between Indigenous people and Jewish people. Do you all see that?
As Jews, we have experienced persecution and discrimination and stereotyping and inequality. We have a responsibility to support other persecuted peoples, particularly if they're minorities.
For Jewish people, that is something to consider before casting a vote on this referendum.
What do you think of the campaign and what are the arguments that you're hearing?
It's very much a right and a wrong approach. It's hard to find a central position.
It's really disappointing that the No campaign are saying if you don't know, vote no, because that's encouraging people to remain ignorant rather than being curious and taking responsibility for what's happening in their country.
Ilona, why did you embrace the kitchen table model for discussing the voice to Parliament?
The kitchen table talks resonated so closely with the way Jewish people have a Friday night and discuss what's happened to them during the week, what the issues of the day are, that it just seemed to be a wonderful model.
You're a Yes voter. Why do you want to encourage people to vote the same way?
I think it's a way forward. And the voice is a way of allowing Indigenous people to have autonomy over their own decisions. So I think for that very fact, it's a very important thing.
Marie, you're voting no. Do you think the voice will get up?
I feel personally that I think slowly people are going to turn to no because of the lack of consultation and the lack of information that has gone out to people. And basically the government has gone gung-ho, vote yes, this is the voice, this is the way to do it, this is great for Aboriginal people, but they didn't tell people how's it going to be established, who's going to sit on it, how is the one reference group going to be able to negotiate with every nation across this country and be a voice to government for us.
Is there anything that anyone could say which might change your vote?
No.
Mike, you're voting yes. Did you hear anything in this room that shifted your thinking?
I mean, I've always tried to be open-minded, but no, not at this stage. What I've heard is what I've heard on the TikTok feedback. And I don't agree with the thoughts that are being put forward.
Grant, anything you've heard that's made you reconsider your no position?
I think that the Truth and Reconciliation should have come first, and the voice could have been legislated without being in the Constitution. I'm voting no to a bureaucracy and to this particular solution.
Simon, might you reconsider your yes stance?
I am still 100% a yes, and I very much doubt that will change.
You cycled from Canberra to the Red Centre. Do you think you changed any minds along the way?
I'd like to think so. I don't know. I guess I'll never know. But I did definitely inform some people that weren't, aware that, it was happening, and, the basic principles of what the voice sort of entailed. I won't know, to be honest. Did have very good, honest conversation, but what people say and what they do are going to be two different things, right? So, yeah.
Steve, you're campaigning within Asian communities. Have you managed to persuade people to vote no?
Oh yes, many times over. I don't have to do much really. The issue with the migrants and the Asians, particularly the mainland Chinese, is that they're not aware. They don't understand it. They do not understand. And they have other things in their mind, like cost of living, energy, all that stuff, mortgage. But once I explain to them the consequence beyond just the voice, we're talking about treaty, we're talking about truth-telling, the issue of division by race. And this is the issue. We are so rushed into this referendum. It's unfair on the average Aussies, not just the migrants. I think we need to really think about how we need to consult and have that conversation with our neighbours until we find a common unity. That's what it's all about.
Megan, how did no campaigners you were initially aligned with feel about your change of mind?
Everything's a conversation away. It was about having those strong, healthy, robust conversation built on trust and respect. So in the sense of, brothers and sisters that are saying no, it was very respectful conversations. There was no animosity, there was no hate, there was no anger. It was just very respectful dialogues. I guess in the context of what's happening right now, we're focusing on all the negatives in terms of the division and the hate and the torment and I guess some of the horrid things that people are being subjected to. What we're not focusing on is the unity, the kindness, the love, the respect, the bringing together of a people. What I'm most pleased about right across the country is that for the first time, for many people, they've not heard about Indigenous issues. They've not explored the challenges in relation to the grim reality. So this has been an educational process for many people right across the country, and it has been positive in that respect. I understand why people do say no. I still firmly believe, in terms of my positions in relation to the no, which has been covered in this room also tonight. But I've had to say yes, because something is better than nothing, particularly when we keep losing family time in, time out. Now, my concern also in terms of what the voice looks like, we haven't been given the detail. That's the reality. So we do not know whether it's going to be 20 people, 25, 30 people. We don't know what it looks like in terms of remote feeding into state, feeding into the national body. That is unclear. I can't say that it's going to work because I don't know. But what I do know is that nothing out there right now is working, and we can't continue to keep waiting while one person dies after the next, and parents are burying their children. Not good enough.
Jordan, how have you tried to convince Miles to vote yes?
I guess to see it through civil conversation. We've been friends for quite a long time now, and we've discussed a lot of issues, and we've been talking about this for years now. In the end, he's a grown man and he can make his own decisions, but I think just trying to relate, that's really how we try to get through to each other, just relate and encourage. But at the end of the day, he votes how he's going to want to vote, and I respect that.
Miles, you also have some personal reasons for, voting no. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
Before I do, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story, Auntie Megan, and I really love your impassioned words, and thank you for all your work you do with suicide prevention. I've lost a brother to suicide and a lot of cousins, so I thank you very much. And you are the voice, so thank you. Look, I'm voting no because, I grew up seeing a lot of the things that affect Aboriginal communities, and I'm pretty sure a lot of my brothers and sisters, Indigenous brothers and sisters in this room can attest to it, the drugs, the alcohol, the social welfare dependency. I just think those things need to be fixed on the ground, and I think only the people in communities and in families can fix those. When we displace those voices and put them in Canberra, I think it does an injustice to our people. I think also because the voice is really predicated on this principle that Aboriginal people are disadvantaged, and that doesn't mean that I'm ignorant to that there are very marginalised people in this country and Indigenous people, But if we enshrine that principle in our constitution, it is forever, and I don't want that principle to be attached to me, to my children and to my grandchildren.
Now, this difference of opinion that you have with Jordan, has that affected your friendship?
No, not at all. Look, like, it comes down to the simple fact that we live in a democracy and everyone's entitled to their opinion, and that doesn't mean that I don't listen to my brother, and I respect his opinion.
So you're still mates?
Yep. No, we have arguments, and he can be stubborn at times. But we can have a beer afterwards, and be mates. That's all it's about.
Well, sadly, we have run out of time, but thank you all so much for being here, and thanks to you, our audience, for watching. And you can catch this episode and other insights on demand. Good night.